The fire crackled softly in the great hearth of Ashmore Manor while autumn rain tapped gently against the tall windows. Emily Carter sat alone in the small servants' sitting room long after the others had gone to bed. A single candle flickered beside her and illuminated the worried expression on her young face. Earlier that day, she had received news that changed everything. She was expecting a child. At 22 years of age, she had never imagined finding herself in such a position. Fear mixed with uncertainty as she stared into the dancing flames. Ashmore Manor had been her home for 3 years. The servants respected her, and the master of the house, Mr. Edward Ashmore, had always treated her with kindness. Yet she knew how Victorian society viewed an unmarried woman carrying a child. Her future suddenly seemed fragile. After many hours of thought, she made a decision. No one would know. She would continue her duties as usual and keep her secret for as long as possible. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees surrounding the manor, while inside, the fire glowed warmly. Emily placed a hand over her stomach and silently promised that whatever happened, she would protect her child. The weeks passed quietly, and Ashmore Manor settled into the comfortable rhythm of late autumn. Every morning, Emily rose before dawn to help prepare the house for the day. She polished silver, carried breakfast trays, and tended fires throughout the manor. At first, hiding her condition seemed easy enough. Loose dresses concealed the changes in her figure, and no one appeared suspicious. Yet, keeping the secret required constant effort. She often felt tired and occasionally dizzy. More than once, she paused while climbing the grand staircase to catch her breath before continuing. The servants noticed her pale complexion, but assumed she was simply overworked. Even Mrs. Whitmore, the strict housekeeper, offered her extra tea on several occasions. Emily accepted with gratitude while carefully avoiding questions. During the evenings, she found comfort beside the kitchen fire where the cook often told stories from her youth. Those peaceful moments allowed her to forget her worries for a little while. Still, every passing day brought a growing fear. Winter was approaching, and sooner or later, her secret would become impossible to hide. Sometimes she would catch her reflection in a mirror and wonder how much longer she had. Yet, whenever anxiety threatened to overwhelm her, she would sit quietly beside a fire and imagine holding her child in her arms. Those thoughts gave her strength. One cold November afternoon, the manor bustled with preparations for an important dinner party. Guests from neighboring estates were expected, and every servant worked tirelessly to ensure everything was perfect. Emily spent the day carrying trays between the kitchen and dining room. By evening, exhaustion weighed heavily upon her. The warmth of the crowded rooms and the endless activity left her feeling faint. She tried to ignore it and continued working. As she crossed the dining room carrying a silver tea service, a sudden wave of dizziness swept over her. The room blurred before her eyes. She reached for the edge of a table but missed. The tray slipped from her hands and crashed loudly onto the polished floor. Conversations stopped instantly. Several guests turned in surprise. Emily felt herself falling, but before she could hit the ground, strong hands caught her. When she opened her eyes, she found herself looking up at Mr. Ashmore. Concern filled his usually calm expression. Without hesitation, He ordered the servants to help her to a nearby chair. Emily attempted to apologize, but her voice trembled. The master insisted that she rest and immediately sent for the village doctor. As she sat trembling beside the fire in a quiet room, she realized that the secret she had guarded so carefully might finally be slipping beyond her control. The doctor arrived shortly before midnight. He was an elderly gentleman who had known the Ashmore family for many years. After examining Emily, he requested a private conversation with Mr. Ashmore. Emily waited nervously beside the fire, listening to distant voices in the corridor. Every minute felt longer than the last. She already knew what the doctor would say. The only question was how the master would react. Eventually, the doctor departed and silence settled over the manor. A short time later, a gentle knock sounded at the door. Mr. Ashmore entered, carrying a tray with tea and fresh bread. Emily lowered her eyes, unable to meet his gaze. To her surprise, there was no anger in his voice. He placed the tray beside her and invited her to eat something. After a long silence, he quietly explained that the doctor had informed him of her condition. Emily felt tears gathering in her eyes. She expected dismissal, perhaps even disgrace. Instead, the master simply asked whether she was comfortable and whether she needed anything. The kindness nearly broke her heart. She apologized repeatedly, but Mr. Ashmore shook his head. He told her that carrying a child was not a crime and that her health must come first. For the first time since learning she was pregnant, Emily felt a small measure of relief. Yet one question remained unspoken between them. Who was the father? The following evening, a fire burned brightly in the library while rain fell softly outside. Mr. Ashmore sat in his favorite chair reading, while Emily rested nearby as instructed by the doctor. The arrangement felt unusual but comforting. Neither spoke for some time. The ticking clock and the crackling fire created a peaceful atmosphere that eased Emily's nerves. Finally, the master set aside his book and looked at her kindly. He told her that rumors would eventually spread among the servants and that she should not face them alone. Ashmore Manor would remain her home for as long as she needed it. Emily struggled to believe what she was hearing. Few employers would show such generosity. Grateful tears filled her eyes. Then Mr. Ashmore gently asked the question he had avoided until now. Did the child's father know about the baby? Emily hesitated before answering no. The master nodded thoughtfully, but did not press further. Outside, the storm continued while warm light filled the library. For a moment, everything felt calm. Yet neither of them noticed a figure standing quietly in the corridor beyond the door. A young gentleman had arrived unexpectedly from London that very evening. As he passed the library, he happened to hear part of their conversation. When he learned that Emily was expecting a child, he stopped in shock. The newcomer was Thomas Ashmore, the master's son, and the expression on his face suggested that he knew far more about Emily's secret than anyone inside the room could possibly imagine. The days following Thomas's arrival passed beneath gray skies and drifting rain. Ashmore Manor felt quieter than usual as winter slowly approached. Emily resumed only light duties and spent much of her time sewing beside the kitchen fire. Although the servants treated her kindly, she could sense their curiosity growing. Whispers occasionally followed her through the Corridors and conversations often stopped when she entered a room. Mrs. Whitmore did her best to discourage gossip, but even she could not silence every rumor. Through it all, Mr. Ashmore remained steadfast in his support. He ensured that Emily rested whenever necessary and often asked after her health. His kindness became the subject of even greater speculation among the staff. Some wondered whether the master knew more than he admitted. Emily tried not to listen. One evening, as snowflakes drifted past the library windows, Thomas found her alone arranging books. The firelight softened the room, and for a moment neither spoke. Finally, Thomas asked the question that had troubled him since arriving. Was she happy? Emily smiled sadly and admitted that happiness felt very distant. Thomas seemed about to say more, but stopped himself. The silence between them held memories neither wished to discuss. As Emily left the room, she failed to notice Mr. Ashmore standing quietly in the doorway. The thoughtful expression on his face suggested that he had witnessed more of the conversation than either of them realized. Part 7. Winter settled over the countryside, and snow covered the grounds of Ashmore Manor like a white blanket. The evenings became longer and cozier. Fires burned in nearly every room, and the scent of pine logs drifted through the house. Despite the warmth, Emily often felt lonely. She spent many evenings sitting beside a small fire in the servants' hall, knitting tiny garments for her child. One night, Thomas joined her unexpectedly. The other servants had retired, and the manor was unusually quiet. For a while, they watched the flames dance across the hearth. Then Thomas spoke softly. He confessed that he had thought about her often while living in London. Emily lowered her eyes. The words stirred emotions she had worked hard to bury. Thomas admitted that leaving Ashmore Manor had been more difficult than he had ever revealed. Before Emily could respond, he asked whether the child belonged to him. The question lingered in the warm air between them. Emily looked directly into his eyes and slowly shook her head. Relief flickered across his face, but it was quickly replaced by confusion. If he was not the father, then who was? Emily gently explained that she could not reveal the truth. She had given her word. Thomas respected her answer, but the mystery troubled him deeply. As they sat quietly before the fire, neither noticed a shadow moving slowly past the doorway. Mr. Ashmore had been searching for a book and had accidentally overheard enough to understand one thing. His son was not the father. December arrived, and with it came preparations for Christmas. Evergreen garlands decorated the grand staircase, and candles glowed warmly throughout the manor. The festive atmosphere brought comfort to everyone, including Emily. For the first time in months, she found herself smiling more often. One snowy afternoon, Mr. Ashmore invited her to take tea in the library. The room felt especially welcoming with its towering bookshelves and roaring fire. They spoke about ordinary things at first: favorite books, childhood memories, winter traditions. Gradually, Emily relaxed. Mr. Ashmore discovered that she possessed a quick wit and a thoughtful mind, while Emily learned that beneath his reserved exterior, the master carried a gentle heart. Their friendship deepened naturally. Neither sought it, yet both valued it. As evening fell, snow drifted silently beyond the windows, and the fire painted golden reflections across the room. Mr. Ashmore noticed how carefully Emily rested a hand upon her growing stomach, and something softened within him. He found himself looking forward to the child's arrival. For reasons he could not fully explain, the future suddenly seemed brighter than it had in years. Yet later that night, Thomas watched them talking together beside the fire and felt an unexpected unease. A possibility entered his mind that he had never previously considered. What if the father was someone much closer than anyone suspected? A week before Christmas, a letter arrived for Emily. The envelope bore no return address, and the handwriting was immediately familiar. Her hands trembled as she carried it to her room. For several minutes, she simply stared at it without opening it. Eventually, curiosity overcame fear. Inside, she found only a few brief lines. The writer apologized for the silence and expressed concern for her well-being. Most importantly, he revealed that he knew about the child. Emily read the letter several times. Although the message contained no signature, she knew exactly who had written it. The words awakened memories of summer evenings and quiet conversations beneath moonlit trees. For the first time in many months, tears filled her eyes. The father had not forgotten her, yet he still remained far away. That evening, she sat beside the library fire while the letter rested hidden in her pocket. Mr. Ashmore noticed her distraction and gently asked whether something troubled her. Emily almost told him everything. The warmth of the room and the kindness in his voice made honesty feel possible. Yet, at the last moment, she remained silent. Some truths were still too dangerous to reveal. Across the room, Thomas watched the exchange and became increasingly convinced that a secret connected all three of them in ways he did not yet understand. Christmas Eve arrived beneath a sky filled with softly falling snow. Ashmore Manor glowed with warmth and light. Candles flickered in every window, and laughter echoed through the halls. The servants gathered in the evening for a special supper, while Mr. Ashmore insisted that everyone share in the celebration. Emily felt happier than she had in many months. The baby moved gently within her, and the sight of the beautifully decorated manor filled her with hope. Later that night, a small gathering assembled in the library. A great fire blazed in the hearth, while Christmas carols drifted softly through the room. Mr. Ashmore sat in his favorite chair. Thomas stood nearby, holding a glass of wine. Emily occupied a comfortable seat close to the fire. For a brief moment, it felt as though they were not master, servant, and heir, but simply three people, enjoying a peaceful winter evening. Then a servant entered, carrying another letter. The moment Emily saw the handwriting, her heart skipped a beat. Thomas noticed her reaction. So did Mr. Ashmore. The room suddenly felt much quieter. Emily opened the envelope carefully and read the contents. Her face grew pale. The letter contained only one sentence. The writer was coming to Ashmore Manor after Christmas, and intended to tell the truth at last. As the fire crackled softly and snow drifted beyond the windows, Emily realized that the secret she had hidden for so long was about to change all of their lives forever. The days after Christmas passed slowly beneath pale winter skies. Emily carried the letter with her everywhere she went. The words were simple yet impossible to ignore. The father of her child was coming to Ashmore Manor. Every crackling fire and every quiet evening seemed filled with anticipation. Thomas noticed her growing anxiety while Mr. Ashmore became increasingly concerned. Neither man knew the contents of the letter, but both sensed that an important change was approaching. On the final evening of the year, a carriage arrived at the manor gates. Emily watched from an upstairs window as a lone gentleman stepped into the snow-covered courtyard. The moment she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. The past had finally come to find her. The visitor was a young architect named William Harper. Months earlier, he had been employed to oversee restoration work on a church near the estate. During that summer, he and Emily had met often while walking through the village. Their friendship had slowly become love. When William received an unexpected opportunity in Scotland, he had left believing he would soon return. Before he could do so, illness and financial troubles delayed him for months. By the time Emily discovered she was expecting a child, she had no reliable way to contact him. Now he stood once more beneath the warm lights of Ashmore Manor. Mr. Ashmore welcomed him politely while Thomas watched with curiosity. Emily and William spoke privately beside the library fire, and before the evening ended, he confessed everything. He was the father of the child and had come to make things right. The truth spread through the household more gently than Emily had feared. William openly accepted responsibility and asked for permission to court her properly. Mr. Ashmore was relieved to learn that neither he nor Thomas had been connected to the mystery after all. Yet more importantly, he saw the sincerity in William's eyes. The young man clearly loved Emily. As January settled across the countryside, the manor became warmer than ever. Emily no longer carried her secret alone. William visited often and spent long evenings speaking with her beside the fire. Together they dreamed about the future and the child who would soon arrive. For the first time in many months, Emily felt truly at peace. One snowy night in February, a fierce storm swept across the estate. Wind rattled the windows and snow piled high against the doors. As servants hurried to keep the fires burning, Emily suddenly felt a sharp pain. The baby had decided to arrive earlier than expected. The doctor was summoned immediately, while Mrs. Whitmore and several maids remained at her side. Throughout the long night, William waited anxiously in the library while Mr. Ashmore sat beside him, offering quiet encouragement. Shortly before dawn, the cries of a newborn echoed through the manor. A healthy baby girl had been born. Tears filled William's eyes as he held his daughter for the first time. Emily smiled through her exhaustion and happiness. Outside, the storm gradually faded and the first light of morning touched the snow-covered grounds. Spring arrived early that year. Snow melted from the gardens, and new flowers appeared beneath the ancient trees of Ashmore Manor. Life felt different now. Laughter often echoed through the house as little Charlotte Harper became the center of attention for everyone who lived there. William and Emily married in a small ceremony attended by the household and several villagers. Mr. Ashmore proudly walked Emily to the chapel door while Thomas served as a witness. The years ahead would bring challenges, as all lives do, but the fear that once surrounded Emily had vanished. In its place stood family, friendship, and hope. On many evenings, the young family gathered in the library, where a cheerful fire burned in the hearth. There they shared stories while Charlotte slept peacefully nearby. And whenever Emily looked into the dancing flames, she remembered the lonely night when she first learned of her pregnancy. What had begun as a frightening secret had become the greatest blessing of her life. The fire crackled softly. The wind whispered. Beyond the windows, and Ashmore Manor settled into another peaceful evening, filled with warmth, love, and the promise of happy tomorrows. If you enjoy cozy Victorian-era stories by the fireplace, be sure to subscribe for more bedtime tales filled with mystery, romance, and gentle adventures.